Welcome back to the Church Biz podcast. I'm Chris Mallonee, one of the partners here at Church Biz. In just a minute, want to introduce our guest, Kyler Chavez. I am filling in for Josh as host today. Typically, Josh leads these, but because of my connection to Kyler and Redeemer Studios, that he helped lead that ministry, I jumped in today to do the podcast. And just to quickly set the stage for our podcast before we get into Kyler's intro, at Church Biz, we say that we want to lead churches and Christian ministries to God-honoring stewardship. When we think about stewardship, we think about time, talent, and treasures. And we focus a lot really on kind of the time and talent, the money side of that and what we do. But in this podcast, in this space, we want to highlight partners that are helping organizations steward their spiritual gifts as well. And that's why I'm excited that we're kind of expand the conversation today beyond just finance, but really stewardship of spiritual gifts through Redeemer Studio. And that's why we brought Kyler on to highlight the work that he's doing. So today we're joined by Kyler Chavez. He's the studio manager at Redeemer Studio in Round Rock, Texas, which is a professional recording space with a kingdom-minded mission to help bless the local church. And so we want to talk about what you do, but first, tell us, Kyler, who you are, give us your background, a little bit of your bio, and thanks for being on today.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. So yeah, I'll try to condense my 30-year life into a few minutes, but the long story short, I'm from Odessa, Texas. So if you've seen the movie Friday Night Lights, that is my my alma mater, and that's where I'm from. So my background is I grew up Methodist, grew up kind of learning how to play guitar in the youth group at that church, and lived there for most of my life. Came here to Round Rock 2 years ago at this point, and actually it was kind of through Chris is how I ended up here, because he was at Redeemer Round Rock at the time, and I've been a musician all my life, or at least since that part that when I started playing in the youth ministry. And so kind of more from this idea of being a musician into learning how to produce songs, learning just how to, I guess, do more than just being a guitar player. And so when I moved here to work out of the Redeemer Studio, which I don't think was really even called like Redeemer Studio at the time, but then we've kind of ended up at this point where it is like a ministry of the church.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, we'll get into today something we're both passionate about is how what happens in the studio can bless the local church and beyond. But even starting out as you've come down to Round Rock from Midland the last couple of years, we've got to know each other well and work together on a lot of projects. Why would you say that a church investing in professional studio space could be just an underrated tool, something that a church considers investing in?
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about like as a church, you don't want to, it's expensive to invest in having your own space, right? So the idea with having, in not even just Redeemer Studio, but just any professional studios, it's a lot cheaper for you to go in and basically rent time at a space than to outfit your own professional recording studio. But I think more than that, really what you get is you kind of have added support of like someone who's been there before. And I mean, Chris has been involved in a lot of music projects. A lot of the technical like aspects of doing music production are not like super easy to learn, and or you have a lot of like time invested over years if you have the right like producer and right person kind of coming alongside you and doing that with you. So I think if you're a church like looking at doing a recording project, one reason maybe to say like doing it at a studio versus like on your own is just the like production quality. I think one thing now, which sometimes could be infuriating, the kind of like standard of production that's expected these days, we want everything to sound like amazing. And I usually sum it up this way, like if you're on Spotify and you're listening to whatever popular music and then someone goes to your song, you don't want a noticeable quality difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you're running a studio out of Redeemer Church in Round Rock. So why don't we start there as well? Just tell us about Redeemer Church in Round Rock, the heart behind it, and how over the last couple of years with you being involved, how the studio fits into the mission of the church.
Yeah. So I think it's just kind of funny that I'm talking about this because these two guys in the room with me have been at Redeemer way longer than me. But I'll do my best to try to explain. Been at Redeemer Round Rock for 2 years now, and when I got there, there was already kind of this like culture of songwriting, creativity, producing music. So I had kind of walked into a place that already had that existing. So this is not anything like new that I've been doing in the church. What has changed over time, and I know the worship pastor at the time, whenever Redeemer bought a building that they had, was they just found this like building had a studio already in it. And so that kind of, I think, from what I understand, kind of sparked like this idea of like, well, the local church can create music, can create even like host artists, and like that a studio could be like a real blessing to like a local church. And so I think as things have kind of morphed over time with starting the like ministry of Redeemer Studio, how it is now, the idea is to make songs, stories, and podcasts that proclaim the good news of Jesus.
I love that. I think the heart, if just looking at the website and just knowing and working with you, is you're doing that for the local church, also for Redeemer Network, that Redeemer Round Rock, the church I'm a part of now, Redeemer Georgetown, and 30 some other churches are part of this network and wanting to bless the local church, the network of churches that we are a part of, as well as artists as well. Is that really who you're targeting with what's happening in the studio?
Yeah, I think whenever the elders of the church were deciding like, hey, I think we can turn this space that's in the church into a more like formal ministry of the church, those are the areas that were important to, I think, the elders and just the overall church, of how can we like use the space in a way, but then also not have it turn into anything that would be like harmful to the church. So yeah, that's, I think, a big part of it. I mean, Austin, great place for music, and I have seen, just like since I've been here, the amount of like, I think, songwriters and just people that I think want to produce music. And I think one thing that's probably like unique about Austin is like there's not this like expectation of like commercial success here. I think people just want to do music in a way that they enjoy doing, and just have the idea of like community around music here.
Yeah, that's good. And you said, if I heard you right, remember right, the three big kind of buckets of work, so to speak, coming out of the studio: song, stories, podcast. Is that right? Those are the three.
Yeah, that is.
So if we jump into specifics of how that works in the studio, I'd love to highlight that. So someone's listening right now, a pastor, executive pastor, a worship pastor, director, maybe someone that works the communication side of the church, and they're curious, listen to you talk. Walk us through what a church or ministry would experience if they worked with you or came into the studio for the first time. What does the process look like for anyone who's interested to start working with Redeemer Studio on songs, stories, or podcasts?
Yeah. One thing I'll like preface before we get into any of this, I'm like still, I feel like kind of new into the whole world of like producing podcasts. So all that being said, the studio is still kind of a work in progress. Like right now, we're just like starting to get into video, and there's another video guy at the church who's been helpful, and he actually does some video too. But depending on what you're doing, I mean, the idea of doing podcasts there, one thing that I try to like help with is being more involved than just like hosting a space for doing anything. And that could be even beyond podcasts and music, of like, I kind of want to help people get their vision across. So when it comes to podcasts, typically actually kind of what I do is people come in, we record, say like a podcast, maybe an hour long that we record a podcast. But after that, I do kind of help with editing, getting them a final product. So that way, I mean, I know a lot of people aren't like technically minded. So it's like the idea of even editing a podcast can seem like really daunting, I think, to a lot of people. And so what I try to do is just kind of like ease, I think, the burden of like, this is something I don't know how to do. And I try to just be there to help facilitate that. And same thing with music. I mean, I think one thing that's a huge factor that I've just seen in the work that I've done is people don't have a lot of time. So when it comes to like producing, let's say like an album project, you may have like the heart or the desire to do it, but the reality of how much time you have dedicated to that doesn't, like, those two things don't align. So I actually find, at least for my work in producing, that's actually a big factor of like why I get work.
Yeah, that's good. Let's hone in on the podcast part of that specifically for a second. I love what you're saying about that. Someone may be listening and just feel overwhelmed of like, I don't know what to do. I want to have a podcast for my church or maybe even beyond for as a way so potential visitors could learn about our church. So why do you think podcasting is such a powerful medium for the local church and something they should consider investing in having a podcast?
Yeah, I'll speak on something because I know Redeemer Round Rock just launched a new podcast this year. So I'll speak to something that's kind of like more in real time. I think what I've seen from that is that people have like a different like touch point throughout the week. I think a lot of times with like, and I could speak on like Redeemer Round Rock specifically, there's not lots of events throughout the week. And so I think that's a great way for people like in your congregation to get to like know you as a person. And I think if you do a podcast, even kind of like this, where it is more of a conversation rather than like a strictly teaching, it's just a great way for people to kind of like understand like you as a person, to understand your personality. And I think also just to have something that like helps people throughout the week of like, there's lots of content out there. And so some of it's good, some of it's not good for you. And so I think it's something that can also just like be a powerful tool for people throughout the week.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any common objections you hear of why churches are not doing podcasts? Take it from that angle.
Yeah, I mean, I think time is probably a big one of like, you know, if you're a pastor, you have so many things like on your plate. Do you want to add like more things to that? And so I think there is an aspect of like having someone help with the production of it can really help eliminate like that it's worth the effort putting forth towards it, but maybe you're not having to do a lot of the like post-production time of like actually facilitating the like delivery of it. And then I think from there, it's just, I think there can just be some maybe like option anxiety of like, there's so many things that you can do with your time. Is podcasting the like best use of your time?
Yeah, you touched on some of this, but what would you say the person's like, hey, in this day and age, I can buy a $50 microphone and I can sit in my office or in my living room and talk into a microphone and throw it up somewhere for people to hear a podcast. What would be the advantages or the benefits you would see of working with Redeemer Studio on a podcast versus just trying to go it solo?
Yeah, I think one like word of like encouragement I would give anyone, like just the fact that you're doing a podcast is a cool thing. Like if you're putting forth the effort of like trying to do it. So even if you have a cheap microphone in your, you know, office, that's a great start. And there's definitely some even things you could do with that. I think there are probably a few things of coming into the studio. One is just knowing that you can come in and let's say if it's a 45-minute podcast, someone else that owns the equipment that you're using, that can really help save a lot of money over time.
Yeah, it's good. I think even, man, I think this is, I was trying to think of this. I think we launched this podcast in 2022, if I remember right, and did one or two. And that was me trying to figure out logic and how to make all these edits, and to where Josh has taken it today on the production side, even how much more quickly he can edit these. I think the same would be true. It's wild to think about. This is, I don't know, our fourth or fifth calendar year of doing this podcast and how far it's come. That's an example I was saying. I was like, hey, just try it. I know we need to do this. Let's try to figure it out. And then as Josh joined our team and has made it so much better, when you have a pro who knows what they're doing, who knows how to edit, can make it sound good, can make it look good. There's obviously huge value in that. And so we talked a little bit about the podcast and the specifics of the studio and how you can help with song story podcasts. I'd love to talk about stories of impact out of the studio. Been going a couple years now. As you think back in your time at Redeemer Studio, is there any story that stands out to you, whether it's on songs or podcast or stories? It's like, man, that was really impactful and is really the why we do that. A story that really kind of highlights the work that you love to do out of the studio.
Yeah, I'll share two stories. One that I was thinking of late last year. I've been working on a project with one of the other Redeemer churches, Jonathan Hunt, who you know.
It's Redeemer Hutto, right here in Hutto,
Yeah,
Texas. Yeah.
and so we were working on something that day, and he had asked a guitar player to come in and help play on some of it that he had kind of had a history with. And I was just thinking of like when I moved here, of like, I knew a few people here, like a few friends, but it was just a really, I guess, like fun moment because I was talking with someone else about it, of like going from this place of like, I don't know these people, to like, these are like two friends I have, and we're like making music together. And I think on my end, selfishly, it was like, well, that was a really, I think, just like cool path to see. The other one that I was thinking of, and this is more like on the song side of it, Dave and I had written a song with a couple of other people and had showed it to our pastor, and with no expectation of like that we're going to record the song. We just wrote a song and wanted to show it to him. And Jordan really liked that song, and he was like, "Hey, could we like play that on Sunday morning?" And we had been probably singing that song, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so at the church, and like he asked like us to record the song. And so I think that is just kind of like a really just impactful way to see, like, it's not necessarily like an upward push of like, hey, we want to record music, but it's more of like a downward push from like the elders of like, hey, we like love the song in church, we want to like hear the song
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Which one was that?
You Will Remain.
You Will Remain. That's cool. So I'll make a plug for that. So Redeemer Round Rock, You Will Remain. If you're listening, wherever you get Spotify, wherever you get music, Apple Music, go check out that song. Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think, and I touched on this at the top, but we talk about helping lead to God honoring stewardship, and what you are doing, and continue to grow that side of the ministry that you're doing is, we're helping on the financial stewardship side, but you're really helping steward the voice and the ministry impact of a church, which is really valuable work, through giving a means to hear the sermon content during the week if someone's traveling or just couldn't make it on Sunday, and help worship leaders who thought, I don't know how I could ever get our story out there or get our songs out there, make that come to life. So I think that's really, really cool. Kind of jumping into transition into just practical next steps. If someone's listening, they say, "Hey, I'm sold. I want to do a podcast. I want to come do some songs out of the studio." What would be a good next step for them?
Yeah, I know that y'all have like my contact info, but you can always just email studio@redeemerrr.org if you're wanting to even just ask questions, really. But I think one thing I would just like say to think about is, if you're doing a podcast, what would be like the vision or the theme for your podcast? And then same thing with like music. What is going to be an overall vision or theme that'll help? Because I think one thing that you don't want to, and I think maybe this is the idea of like stewardship, of if you're going and pursuing a project, you want it to really like honor like the your congregation, like your church. And so there's some different ideas that you can use for that. So I know like one thing at Redeemer has been the idea of producing music alongside like a sermon series. And I know some people do podcasts that go along with the sermon series, but having just seeing some different ideas out there of like, hey, how can we have like a theme that works for this, that helps kind of support the overall like voice of our church.
It's great. We'll add these in the show notes, what you mentioned. The studio at redeemerrr.org is your studio email. There's also a studio page, right, on redeemerrr.org, the website. And you're on Instagram also, Redeemer Studios?
Yeah. Redeemer Studio RR on Instagram as
So those
well.
would be three ways: contact form, email, or find on social media through Instagram that can get in touch with you. And yeah, that's really good. We'll start kind of working towards a closing here. So glad you've come on. This has been really good stuff. As we kind of start wrapping up, if there's one takeaway every church leader listening today that you want them to get from our conversation around Redeemer Studios, what would that be?
Yeah. And kind of like thinking about coming on here, one thing I was thinking about, and with kind of the role I'm in, I meet just like lots of different people involved, and a lot of them, honestly, probably more so in like worship. And so if you're a pastor thinking about like what like what does like music mean for me? One thing I would say that I just like hear from a lot of worship leaders, and I think can lead to it, is a lot of like burnout, or just this idea of like Sunday morning. It takes a lot of work just to get like Sunday morning to work. And so for a lot of people, even for like for like a worship pastor, it could be just like a gift to like work on like a project of like, this is something kind of outside of the normal Sunday morning, or just the morning, like the Sunday morning preparedness, I guess, that you have to go through every week. Of like, if they get the ability to work on a project, like that could be a real gift. And the idea of seeing the impact of like the work that you do, if you can capture that through whether it's songs, stories, podcasts, that those are things that can be like evergreen.
Yeah, that's good, man. I'm grateful for the work that you do. I'm grateful for Redeemer Studios. Obviously, I've been part of a lot of that over the years, and even now, as we're at churches 15 minutes down the road from each other, the collaboration we get to have, what we get to do in the network, just grateful for what you're doing and the team over there. So again, we'll have in the show notes the ways they can get in contact with you, anyone listening, for podcasts, for doing songs, for doing stories. Let's end. We like to end on fun time on the podcast. So Kyler, let's pretend we live in a world where there's no Starlink satellite Wi-Fi, or the old, you're on a deserted island and you got one CD you can take with you to listen to. What's your favorite album of all time that you could listen to on repeat?
No, I'll start off. This is not a very fair question for a music person. But I think if I had to pick just like one album of all time, I may pick a Bon Iver album, because I love Bon Iver. But I grew up learning guitar through John Mayer, and so I probably would have to pick like Continuum by John Mayer. That just got me started. So
man,
I think that's a good answer. But
yeah,
what would be your answer?
Oh man, that's a great one. And I love John Mayer. My wife loved John Mayer. That's good. Gosh, I love Bon Iver as well. That's a tough one. If I can't answer these without caveats. I'm the same as you. I think one I'm listening to right now, he's probably 20 years younger than me. Young dude, Joshua Sloan. He put out a 16-song album. I just have it on repeat. There's not a song on that album that I don't enjoy. I think Zach Bryan helped him get discovered on his tour. So that's what I've been listening to recently on repeat. As an all-timer, I'd probably have to go Parachutes by Coldplay. I felt like that kind of pulled culture out of the boy band era into indie rock, like in the late 90s, early 2000s. I love that album. That was a good one for me.
Yeah, that one's on repeat a lot for me.
Yeah, that's cool. What about do you have a favorite concert that you remember? Something stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is like me outing myself as like a John Mayer fan, but I did see his like solo tour a few years ago, but my very first concert was a John Mayer concert. So I think that one will always stick out to me. Of like, when I was learning guitar, there was like 4 or 5 of us guys that were in the youth group at the time, and we all learned guitar together. And we all went to that concert when we were like 14 or 15. So that was a fun memory.
Very cool. Last one. What's a fun fact about you that people may not know, or you tell somebody listening today? Fun fact about Kyler.
Fun fact about me. Well, I think in Friday Night Lights, I had like a little. I was like an extra in it, so that's usually like a good fun one.
The movie or the TV show?
The movie. Now, if you're from Odessa, we don't really acknowledge the TV show. That's just a part of the culture.
That's good to know. Okay, that's good to know. Oh man, that's a lot of fun. Well, again, thanks for coming on, Kyler. We'll push this out as our podcast gets out. I'll have your contact info, like I said, and really, again, we want to use the space to highlight ministry partners, which obviously you're a huge one at Redeemer Church in Round Rock, and then the work you're doing in the studio. For those listening, we want to be a resource to help lead churches and ministries to God-honoring stewardship. So follow us. Follow Church Biz on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find us on our website, churchbiz.com. We've got a new hub where we put all our resources, these podcasts, ton of information. We want to be a resource to your church, highlighting ministries we work with, as well as the work that we do to continue to serve you. So thanks for being on, Kyler, and thanks for listening today.